"You're just a burden on our shoulders," my daughter Alice exclaimed on my birthday when I asked for help. That night I was kicked out of the house where I had lived for years, supporting them with everything I had. So I froze their access to all my credit cards, canceled their first-class tickets to Hawaii, and then I did what they thought I was incapable of doing. But that was only the beginning of my plan. Then I did something that even I didn't expect myself to do. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The shopping list crumpled in my hand like forgotten promises. "Alice, could you drive me to the store? I need supplies for the barbecue tonight." The words hung in the bright Kalispell kitchen, morning sunlight streaming through cluttered counters where coffee mugs sat abandoned like our conversations. My daughter looked up from her phone, eyes cold as Montana winter. "Are you serious right now? It's just a quick trip. I invited Jim and Carol. Maybe Dave." "Dad." "No." She stood, chair scraping against tile. "I'm not your chauffeur. You're just a burden on our shoulders. You know that?" The words hit like a physical blow. 65 years old, and my own daughter spoke to me like I was some unwanted obligation. "Alice, it's my birthday. I just wanted to cook for friends." "Your birthday?" She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think that makes you special? You think that changes anything?" Logan appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "What's all the noise about?" "Dad wants me to drive him around like some taxi service." Alice spat. "Jesus, Ralph." Logan's voice carried that familiar contempt. "Can't you figure this out yourself? We're not running a charity here." My fingers tightened around the list. Beer, steaks, corn, charcoal. Simple things for a simple celebration. I've never asked for much. "Haven't asked for much?" Alice's voice climbed higher. "You live in our house, eat our food, use our utilities. Everything we do revolves around taking care of you." The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Our house. The kitchen was silent except for the humming of the refrigerator. Our home. The house I bought for them, where I gave them everything, asking for nothing but a place to live. "Fine." I grabbed my coat from the hook. "I'll manage." Alice slammed her palm on the counter. "Don't play the victim, Dad. We all know how this works." I walked out without another word, leaving the birthday card from my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, unopened on the counter. The morning air bit at my cheeks as I pulled out my phone, fingers steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Yellow cab. Yes, I need a ride to Miller's Market." The taxi arrived within minutes, driver nodding politely as I settled into worn vinyl seats. Through the window, I watched their house shrink away. The white picket fence I'd painted last summer, now looking like prison bars. "Special occasion?" the driver asked, glancing at my list. "Recent birthday barbecue." The words tasted hollow. As we pulled through downtown Kalispell, memories flooded back, unbidden. The day I'd signed the deed over to Alice and Logan, thinking I was securing their future. The college tuition I'd paid, the wedding I'd funded, the countless times I'd opened my wallet without hesitation. Every sacrifice had been willing, given with love. Miller's Market buzzed with Saturday morning shoppers. I selected each item carefully. Thick ribeye steaks, fresh corn still in husks, premium charcoal. The cashier, a young man with kind eyes, helped me bag everything. Having folks over, a few old friends, I paid cash, bills I'd withdrawn earlier this week. The taxi ride home passed in contemplative silence. The driver helped me carry bags to the front door, refusing my offer of a larger tip with a wave and a smile. Small kindnesses from strangers felt precious now. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Alice and Logan had disappeared, probably to their room to complain about the inconvenience of my existence. I unpacked methodically, arranging steaks in the refrigerator, corn in a bowl, charcoal by the back door. The dining room table awaited decoration. I pulled out my good plates, the ones Maria and I had received as wedding gifts 40 years ago, each piece placed with ceremony, as if setting a proper table could somehow restore dignity to this day. Through the window I could see the backyard grill standing ready. The metal surface gleamed in the afternoon sun, waiting for purpose. As I smoothed the tablecloth with careful hands, something hardened in my chest, a resolve I hadn't felt in years. The doorbell would ring soon. Jim and Carol would arrive with their easy laughter and genuine warmth. For a few hours I'd remember what it felt like to be valued, to be welcome in my own space. I stood at the window, watching afternoon shadows lengthen across the yard, my fist clenched at my side. The grill waited, my friends would come, and after that, things would change. The doorbell's echo pulled me from my thoughts. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find Jim and Carol standing there with warm smiles and a bottle of wine. "Happy birthday, you old goat!" Jim clapped my shoulder while Carol kissed my cheek, her perfume a gentle reminder of better times. "Thought we'd never get here." Carol laughed. Traffic was murder. Coming through town. Dave arrived moments later carrying a six-pack and wearing his signature flannel shirt. "Ready to burn some meat, Ralph?" We moved to the backyard where Montana's big sky stretched endlessly above us. The grill fired up with a satisfying whoosh, flames dancing blue and orange. I arranged the steaks while Jim cracked open beers, the familiar ritual feeling sacred somehow. "Remember when we used to do this every weekend?" Dave settled into a lawn chair, legs stretched out. "Back when we thought we'd live forever." "Speak for yourself," Carol teased. "I'm still planning on it." Their laughter filled the air like music. This was what I'd wanted. Simple friendship, easy conversation. The comfort of being understood. The steak sizzled, filling the yard with rich, smoky scent. "Are Alice and Logan joining us?" Jim asked, glancing toward the house. "I'll ask." I wiped my hands and stepped inside, finding them both in the living room, absorbed in their phones. "Hey, you two? My friends are here. Want to come out?" And Alice looked up, her expression sour. "No thanks. I'm not interested in an old folks gathering." Logan didn't even lift his eyes from his screen. "Yeah, we'll pass on the geriatric convention." Heat rose in my cheeks. "They're good people. They'd like to meet you." "I'm sure they would." Alice's voice dripped sarcasm. "But I have better things to do than pretend to care about your sad little birthday party." I returned to the backyard, forcing a smile. My friends had heard everything through the open door. I could see it in their carefully neutral expressions, the way they suddenly became very interested in their beer bottles. "Everything all right?" Carol asked, gently. "Fine, they're just busy." I flipped the steaks, grease spattering against the grill grate. The memory hit me then, sharp and bitter. 3 years ago, Logan had come to me with his business plan, some vague startup idea about app development. I'd written him a check for $15,000 without hesitation, believing in his dreams, even when the details seemed fuzzy. The business had failed within 6 months. The money vanished like smoke. "These steaks look perfect," Dave said, clearly trying to lighten the mood. I served them on my good plates, the same ones I'd arranged with such care earlier. We ate in companionable silence, the food tasting like ash in my mouth despite their compliments. "Well," Jim said eventually, checking his watch, We should probably head out soon. Carol's got her book club tomorrow. Of course. I stood, beginning to clear plates. Let me walk you to the gate. They gathered their things with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to awkward exits. At the front door, Carol squeezed my hand. Thank you for a lovely evening, Ralph. The steaks were wonderful. Happy birthday, friend. Jim's handshake lingered. Take care of yourself. I walked them to the gate, watching their taillights disappear into the Montana dusk. The evening air carried the scent of cooling charcoal and fading hopes. Birds settled into trees with final chirps. The day officially ending. Back inside, I found Alice and Logan waiting in the living room, arms crossed like judges, preparing to deliver a verdict. The front door stood firmly closed behind me as if sealing off the life I was leaving behind. Nice party, Alice said, her voice sharp with mockery. Really showed us how important you are. Logan smiled, cold and calculating. Yeah, Ralph, real impressive guest list. I stood there, hands still smelling of smoke and disappointment, feeling something dangerous stirring in my chest. The open door framed the darkness outside, promising possibilities I hadn't dared imagined before tonight. The dining room table still held the remnants of celebration, crumpled napkins, empty glasses, the ghost of better times. One paper napkin had fallen to the floor, forgotten and alone. I closed the door with deliberate care, the click echoing through the house like a decision being made. The evening chill crept through the closing door as I stepped into the dimly lit living room. Alice and Logan stood there like sentinels, arms folded across their chests, faces set in hard accusation. The television flickered blue light across their rigid forms. Really nice show you put on out there, Alice began, her voice sharp as winter wind. Logan stepped forward, jaw clenched. What the hell were you thinking, Ralph? Bringing those old fools into our house? They're my friends. My voice remained steady, though something cold settled in my stomach. Good people who wanted to celebrate. This is our house. Logan cut me off, pointing his finger like a weapon. You live under our roof. You don't get to invite random people over whenever you feel like it. Alice nodded, eyes glittering with something that looked like satisfaction. We didn't agree to host your little senior citizen social club. I cooked. I cleaned up. They didn't disturb anything. That's not the point. Logan's voice rose, echoing off the walls. The point is you don't make decisions here. You're a guest in this house, and guests don't throw parties. The word guest hung in the air like smoke. Guest. In the house I'd purchased for them 2 years ago when they couldn't afford rent after Logan lost his job. The house where I'd signed my name on the mortgage papers, believing family meant something. If you can't respect our rules, Alice said, crossing her arms tighter, then maybe you need to find somewhere else to live. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the soft murmur of late-night television. I looked at them both, my daughter and her husband, and saw strangers wearing familiar faces. Fine. Alice blinked, clearly expecting more argument. What? I said. Fine. I turned toward the staircase, hand gripping the banister. I'll pack. Logan scoffed behind me. Don't be dramatic, Ralph. We're just trying to set some boundaries here. I climbed the stairs without responding, each step deliberate and measured. My room, the guest room apparently, waited at the end of the hallway. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet, the leather handle worn smooth by decades of business trips and family vacations. Clothes folded neatly into the case, toiletries gathered from the bathroom. The photograph of Maria and me from our last anniversary together, taken before the cancer took her. My fingers traced her smile as I wrapped it in a soft shirt. The memory struck me then, sharp and unwelcome. Alice's wedding day 6 years ago. The bill for the reception had been staggering. $28,000 for flowers, catering, photography, the works. I'd written the check without hesitation, watching my daughter dance in her white dress, believing I was investing in happiness. Worth every penny, I told Maria that night, both of us exhausted, but smiling. Now Alice wanted me gone for having friends over for dinner. I zipped the suitcase closed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. My wallet, thick with the cash I'd withdrawn for the birthday barbecue. Car keys. No, the car was registered in both our names. Now, another gift. Another chain I'd forged myself. Downstairs, Alice and Logan had returned to the couch, pretending to watch television. Neither looked up as I approached, suitcase wheels rolling softly across the hardwood floor. I set my house key on the coffee table with a gentle click. The metal caught the TV's blue glow for a moment before settling into shadow. "Ralph," Alice started, but I was already walking toward the door. "Where are you going?" Logan's voice carried a note of something that might have been uncertainty. I opened the front door, cool night air rushing in to fill the space between us. Out. The door closed behind me with the same deliberate care I'd used before. But this time, I was on the other side of it, suitcase in hand, standing on the porch of a house that was no longer my home. The street stretched away into darkness, streetlights casting pools of yellow on empty pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and fell silent. I took my first step away from the house, wheels of my suitcase beginning their rhythmic rumble against the concrete. The night air tasted of freedom and uncertainty in equal measure. My footsteps echoed against the quiet pavement as the house disappeared behind me, swallowed by darkness and distance. The suitcase bumped over sidewalk cracks, each jolt traveling up through the handle into my arm like a reminder of what I'd left behind. Kalispell at night was different than during the day, softer, somehow more forgiving. Streetlights created islands of warmth in the cool Montana air, and my breath formed small clouds that disappeared into the darkness. The familiar weight of my wallet pressed against my chest, containing enough cash to last several weeks if I was careful. As I walked, memories bubbled up unbidden. Alice at 18, sobbing in my kitchen after her first heartbreak. I'd held her while she cried, promising that things would get better, that she deserved someone who would treat her with respect. The irony wasn't lost on me now. The sidewalk stretched ahead, leading toward the commercial district, where I knew there was a modest motel. My legs, unused to such sustained walking, already ached with the effort, but something about the physical discomfort felt cleansing. Each step a small act of rebellion against years of quiet submission. A car passed, headlights briefly illuminating my path, before disappearing around a corner. The driver probably wondered about the old man walking alone with a suitcase, but I felt no shame. If anything, I felt more purposeful than I had in months. I passed the elementary school where Alice had attended kindergarten, its playground equipment casting strange shadows in the moonlight. I remembered picking her up here, her small hand in mine, as she chattered about her day. When had that bright, loving child become the cold woman who'd ordered me from my own home? The memory of her mother's funeral hit me like a physical blow. Alice, devastated and lost, leaning against me as dirt fell on Maria's casket. I'd promised to take care of her, to make sure she never felt alone or abandoned. For 2 years after Maria's death, I'd been Alice's anchor, helping her navigate grief, supporting her through therapy, being present whenever she needed me. And this was how it ended, with house keys on a coffee table and a suitcase rolling down an empty street. The neon sign of the Pine Lodge Motel buzzed softly in the distance, its red letters spelling out vacancy like a welcome. My pace quickened slightly, though whether from eagerness or exhaustion, I couldn't tell. The night clerk, a young woman with tired eyes and a genuine smile, checked me in without judgment. Room 12, quiet spot in the back. The key was old-fashioned metal, heavy in my palm. Real keys for real doors. Something solid and honest about that. Room 12 smelled of pine cleaner and faded cigarette smoke. A single bed with a floral comforter, a small table with 2 chairs, a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. It wasn't much, but it was mine for the night. I unpacked methodically, hanging shirts in the narrow closet, arranging toiletries on the bathroom counter. The photograph of Maria went on the nightstand, her smile keeping me company in the strange room. When everything was organized, I lay on the bed, fully clothed, hands folded behind my head, staring at the ceiling. Water stains formed abstract patterns above me, and somewhere in the walls, pipes gurgled quietly under the vast Montana sky, dotted with stars like forgotten hopes. I pieced together the years of quiet giving, now fueling this quiet fire within. Alice's college tuition, $43,000. Logan's car when he lost his sales job, $18,000. The down payment on their first apartment, $12,000. Wedding costs, emergency loans, Christmas gifts, birthday checks. How much had I given over the years? How much of myself had I poured into their lives? Believing that love was measured in dollars and sacrifice, my breathing steadied as something crystallized in my chest. Not anger. Anger was too hot, too unfocused. This was something cooler, more deliberate. A quiet certainty that I was done being treated like a burden by people who'd built their lives on my generosity. The ceiling stared back at me, offering no answers, but somehow confirming what I already knew. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would stop being the man who gave everything and asked for nothing. Tomorrow I would start being the man who understood his own worth. Morning light filtered through the thin motel curtains, like a gentle awakening, painting golden stripes across the faded carpet. I stretched in the narrow bed, surprised by how well I'd slept, better than I had in months, despite the unfamiliar surroundings. Something had shifted overnight, as if leaving that house had lifted a weight I'd grown so accustomed to carrying that I'd forgotten what freedom felt like. I dressed quickly, hands steady as I buttoned my shirt. The mirror above the dresser reflected a man who looked different than the one who checked in last night. Same face, same graying hair, but something in the eyes had changed. Purpose, determination. The room phone sat on the nightstand, black and solid with real buttons. I dialed the taxi company, speaking clearly into the receiver. Yes, Pine Lodge Motel. I need a ride to First National Bank on Main Street. 10 minutes, came the reply. Outside, Kalispell was waking up. The taxi arrived promptly, driver nodding as I settled into the back seat. Through the window, I watched the town come to life. Coffee shops opening, people walking dogs, children waiting for school buses, normal morning rhythms of a community I'd been part of for decades, but somehow never truly belonged to. Business at the bank? The driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror, taking care of some accounts. The bank's marble lobby echoed with the sound of my footsteps. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in stark, honest light. The morning teller, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, smiled as I approached. "Good morning," How can I help you? I need to block access to my credit cards for specific authorized users. She paused, fingers hovering over her keyboard. Are the cards lost or stolen? No, I want to remove access permissions for 2 people. My daughter Alice King and her husband, Logan King. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Sir, that's quite unusual. Are you certain about this? Family financial disputes can be complicated. I'm certain. My voice carried no hesitation. They no longer have my permission to use my accounts. The teller nodded slowly. Professional discretion taking over. I'll need to see identification and verify your account details. Papers shuffled across the counter, forms to sign, authorizations to revoke, signatures to witness. Each pen stroke felt like another chain breaking. As buildings blurred past during my cab ride here, a sense of liberation had washed over me, sharper than the sunlight piercing the glass, marking the end of endless concessions. The memory surfaced as I signed the final document. Just 2 months ago, Alice had called in tears about wanting to renovate their kitchen. The estimate was $12,000. I transferred the money that same day, no questions asked, believing that investing in their home was investing in our family's future. Their kitchen, their home, their future, not ours, never ours. The changes will take effect immediately, the teller explained, sliding the paperwork into a folder. All cards linked to your accounts will require your direct authorization for any future use. Perfect. I walked back outside, the morning air crisp and full of possibility. Another taxi waited at the curb. I'd called ahead, planning each step with newfound clarity. The driver held the door open, and I settled into the familiar vinyl seat. Back to Pine Lodge. Yes. As the bank receded in the rear window, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of making a decision purely for myself. No consultation, no guilt, no second guessing, just clean, decisive action. The taxi pulled away from the curb, merging into the midday traffic. In my pocket, my phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't need to look to know who was calling. The phone buzzed against my leg like an angry wasp. As the taxi navigated through downtown traffic, I pulled it from my pocket, Alice's name flashing on the screen with each insistent ring. The driver glanced in the mirror, but said nothing. Focusing on the road ahead, I swiped to answer. What the hell did you do? Alice's voice exploded through the speaker before I could say hello. My card was just declined at Nordstrom. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Hello to you too, Alice. Don't you dare take that tone with me. I was buying heels for a work presentation, and the cashier had to cut up my card right there in front of everyone. The taxi hit a pothole, jostling me against the worn seat. Through the window, Kalispell's main street rolled past. The same shops where Alice had dragged me countless times, credit card in hand, purchasing things she claimed were necessities. How does it feel? I asked, voice steady as mountain stone. How does what feel? Being humiliated by my own father, being a burden, being an embarrassment. I let the words sink in. Yesterday you told me I was just a burden on your shoulders. Today you're calling because you can't buy shoes with my money. Silence stretched across the connection. The taxi driver pretended not to listen, but I caught his eyes in the mirror. He'd heard enough family drama in his back seat to recognize the sound of relationships fracturing. This is different. Alice's voice returned higher now, edged with something that might have been panic. You can't just cut us off. We have expenses, obligations. So did I. For 20 years, the memory flashed. Alice at 25 calling from a boutique in Seattle where she'd found the perfect dress for some charity gala, $300 for a single evening. I'd given her my card number over the phone without hesitation, believing that her happiness was worth any price. Dad, you're being ridiculous. This isn't how family works. You're right. I watched a mother pushing a stroller past a bus stop, her toddler pointing excitedly at a passing dog. Simple joy, uncomplicated by manipulation or guilt. Family doesn't work by calling each other burdens. Family doesn't work by kicking people out of their homes for having friends over. We didn't kick you out. You chose to leave, after you told me to find somewhere else to live. Her voice cracked slightly. That's not... We were just frustrated. You can't. I can. The words felt foreign in my mouth. When was the last time I'd said them to her? I can make my own decisions about my own money. Seems like a burden you'll have to carry now. I ended the call with a soft touch, the phone falling silent in my palm. The taxi continued its steady progress through town, passing the library where I'd taken Alice for Storytime 30 years ago. 30 years ago, the park where she'd learned to ride a bicycle with my hand on her back for balance. As her voice faded into static, the road stretched ahead like a path to newfound boundaries. Each bump echoing the finality of my words. Everything all right back there? The driver asked, getting better by the minute. The Pine Lodge Motel sign came into view, its neon letters bright against the Montana skies. But as we approached, I noticed a figure standing near the entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, arms crossed in a posture I recognized all too well. The taxi slowed, and my phone remained mercifully quiet in my hand. Someone was waiting for me. The taxi slowed to a stop in the gravel parking lot, afternoon shadows stretching long across the asphalt. Through the windshield, I could see him clearly now, Logan pacing back and forth under the flickering Pine Lodge sign like a caged animal. His shoulders were tense, hands clenched at his sides, and even from a distance, I could see the anger radiating from every line of his body. "That'll be $12.50, the driver said, but his eyes were fixed on Logan's agitated figure. I handed him $15, pocketing the key card. "Keep the change." As I stepped out of the taxi, Logan spotted me immediately. He strode across the lot with quick, aggressive steps, his face flushed red with fury. "Ralph, what the hell do you think you're playing at?" I closed the car door calmly, facing him as he approached. The afternoon air carried the scent of dust and distant pine trees, a peaceful contrast to the storm brewing in his eyes. "Logan, what brings you here? Don't act stupid with me." He was close enough now that I could see the veins bulging in his neck. Alice's card got declined. Our airline confirmation just got canceled. "You think you can just..." "I think I can make decisions about my own money." My voice stayed level, though my heart was picking up speed. "Revolutionary concept, I know." Logan's hands rolled into fists, sleeves bunching like coiled springs. In that charge pause, as gravel crunched underfoot, memories surfaced of the loans I extended without question. Like the time Logan's business partner embezzled $30,000, leaving him bankrupt and desperate. I'd written the check the same day he called, no questions asked, believing family meant covering each other's mistakes. "You senile old fool," Logan snarled, stepping closer. "You're going to fix this right now. Or what?" I took a step back, not from fear, but to maintain distance. Logan lunged forward, grabbing for my shirt collar. But before his fingers could make contact, the taxi driver was suddenly there, stepping between us with the solid presence of someone who'd dealt with troublemakers before. "Hey now," the driver's voice carried quiet authority. "That's enough of that." Logan stopped mid-reach, surprised by the intervention. "This is none of your business." "This gentleman paid his fare politely and treated me with respect," the driver said, not backing down despite being shorter than Logan. "You want to throw punches? Do it somewhere else. I won't stand by and watch you attack a decent man." The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge. Logan's face cycled through anger, confusion, and something that might have been shame. Three strangers in a motel parking lot, two of them protecting each other from the third. "This isn't over, Ralph," Logan spat, but he was already backing away, not by a long shot. He stalked back to his pickup truck, engine roaring to life with unnecessary aggression. Gravel sprayed as he peeled out of the lot, the sound of his departure echoing off the motel's weathered walls. I turned to the taxi driver who was straightening his jacket, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Thank you. That was unexpected kindness," he shrugged, genuine warmth in his weathered face. "Man can't stand by and watch bullies work. Take care of yourself." The taxi pulled away with a gentle purr, leaving me alone in the sudden quiet. I walked toward my room, keycard steady in my hand, despite the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The door lock beeped softly, green light flashing. "Welcome." As I turned the key in the lock, a faint engine rumble faded in the distance. Logan's truck, disappearing into whatever frustrated retreat, awaited him. The door swung open to reveal my modest sanctuary, unchanged from how I'd left it that morning. But something had changed in me. Standing up to Logan, having a stranger defend my dignity, watching my son-in-law retreat like a defeated schoolyard bully, it all crystallized into something harder and more certain than mere anger. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me into the quiet space where my real plans could finally take shape. Sunlight pierced through the motel blinds like golden arrows, painting stripes across the faded carpet, and pulling me from the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in years. Yesterday's confrontation with Logan had left me feeling strangely energized rather than drained, as if finally standing my ground had unlocked reserves of strength I'd forgotten I possessed. I showered and dressed with deliberate care, choosing my best casual shirt and slacks. Today called for a certain dignity, a presentation of self that reflected the seriousness of my intentions. The man in the bathroom mirror looked older than his years, but carried himself with renewed purpose. The bus stop sat 3 blocks from the motel, marked by a simple metal sign and a small wooden bench. Kalispell's public transportation wasn't extensive, but it would get me where I needed to go. As I waited, watching early commuters hurry past with coffee cups and purpose, I felt no urgency. Time was finally on my side. The bus arrived with a gentle wheeze of air brakes, driver nodding as I climbed aboard. Through the window, Montana's rolling hills stretched toward distant mountains, the landscape unchanged by human drama. The medical bills I'd covered just last month flashed through my mind. Logan's emergency room visit after a weekend hiking accident, $800 that had appeared on my credit card statement without warning or explanation. Downtown Legal District, I told the driver when he asked my destination. Big day ahead, you could say that. The law office of Morrison Baker and Associates occupied the second floor of a historic brick building on Main Street. The receptionist, a professional woman with graying hair and kind eyes, scheduled me immediately when I explained my needs. "Mr. Morrison can see you now," she said, leading me down a hallway lined with diplomas and photographs of Kalispell's legal history. James Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with a careful attention to detail that came from handling people's final wishes. His office smelled of leather and old books, wood paneling creating an atmosphere of serious business. "Mr. King, I understand you'd like to revise your will. Completely rewrite it. I settled into the client chair, feeling the weight of the decision. I want to establish a charitable fund instead of leaving everything to my family. Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained professional. That's certainly your right. Are there specific charities you have in mind? Organizations that help seniors who've been abandoned by their families, people who need dignity restored. For the next hour, we worked through the details. Morrison explained options, consequences, legal requirements, with each clause revised under the hum of fluorescent bulbs, a weight lifted, replacing years of quiet endurance with deliberate steps ahead. "This is remarkably brave," Morrison said as I signed the final documents. "Most people struggle to make changes this significant, especially regarding family. Most people haven't been called a burden by their own daughter." The pen scratched across official paper, like carving new paths. Each signature felt like another door closing on my old life and opening onto something cleaner, more honest. "The changes take effect immediately," Morrison explained, sliding copies into a manila envelope. "Your assets will be held in trust, distributed according to your specifications upon your death. Your family will receive notification if they're named in any previous versions." "Perfect." I shook his hand, appreciating the firm grip and direct eye contact. Lawyers, I'd learned, dealt with family drama as much as legal codes. Morrison had seen enough bitter inheritance disputes to recognize genuine resolve. Walking down the courthouse steps, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The afternoon sun painted everything in sharp relief. Storefronts, passing cars, people going about their ordinary days, unaware that somewhere among them an old man had just reclaimed his life. My phone chimed softly in my pocket, a sound I'd grown to associate with fresh complications. I pulled it out, squinting at the screen in the bright Montana sunlight. The notification showed a calendar reminder, something I'd apparently set and forgotten. It was a reminder to call my sister in Oregon, a trip I'd postponed for years to prioritize Alice's endless needs. Now, it felt like a promise to myself, a step toward reconnecting with family who actually valued me. My thumb hovered over the screen as the implications began to dawn on me. There was still more to do. The bustling Kalispell sidewalk welcomed me back into the rhythm of ordinary life as I stepped out of Morrison's law office. The signed papers rested securely in my jacket pocket. Their weight, both symbolic and literal, the future I'd spent decades building for Alice and Logan, had just been redirected to strangers who would appreciate the gift. A city bus wheezed to a stop at the corner, passengers filing on with the patient efficiency of people accustomed to small-town transportation schedules. I climbed aboard, dropping exact change into the fare box, and finding a seat near the window where Montana's vast landscape stretched beyond the glass. As the bus pulled away from the legal district, my eye caught a travel advertisement plastered on a storefront window. Pristine beaches, swaying palms, the promise of tropical paradise. The image triggered a memory so sharp, it felt like a physical blow. 3 weeks ago, I'd booked that Hawaii vacation. First-class flights for all 3 of us, ocean view suite at the Grand Wa, rental car upgrade, a celebration of what I'd naively believed was family unity. $28,000 charged to my platinum card without a second thought, imagining Alice and Logan's faces when I surprised them with the printed confirmations. A family trip, I told myself, to heal old wounds and make new memories. The irony tasted bitter now. Back in my motel room, I pulled out my phone and opened the airline app. The reservation appeared immediately. King party of 3, departing July 15th, returning July 22nd. Premium seats with extra legroom priority boarding, complimentary champagne service. I tapped the cancellation button. "Are you sure you want to cancel this reservation?" The screen prompted. "Cancellation fees may apply." My thumb hovered for exactly 1 second before confirming. The hotel booking came next. 7 nights in paradise, now reduced to a confirmation email marked "Cancelled" in red letters. As confirmations piled up on the screen amid the quiet hum of the air conditioner, a quiet satisfaction bloomed, rooting deeper than the regrets I'd carried for years. Each cancelled reservation felt like another shackle falling away, another decision made purely for my own peace of mind. The phone's contact list scrolled past dozens of names before I found the one I wanted. Jim Harrison, my oldest friend, and one of the few people who'd witnessed last night's humiliation firsthand. His number dialed immediately. "Ralph, how are you holding up after yesterday?" "Better than expected, actually." "Jim, would you be free for coffee this afternoon? There's something I need to tell you." "Of course, the usual place. Murphy's Cafe on 3rd Street. 2 hours, good for you." "Perfect. I'll see you there." I ended the call and pocketed the phone, glancing at the bedside clock. 45 minutes until our meeting. Enough time to process the morning's decisions, to prepare for the conversation that would mark yet another step away from the man I'd been, and toward the person I was becoming. The cancellation emails had stopped pinging, leaving the room in blessed silence. Outside, Kispel continued its unhurried pace, unaware that somewhere in room 12 of the Pine Lodge Motel, a man was systematically dismantling every bridge he'd built to ungrateful children. I straightened my collar and checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The face, looking back, still belonged to Ralph King, but the eyes held something new, a clarity that came from finally understanding the difference between love and enabling, between family loyalty and self-respect. The clock showed 1:30. Time to go meet the only person from yesterday's gathering who'd actually seemed happy to see me. The brass handle of Murphy's Cafe felt solid and welcoming as I pushed open the door, afternoon sunlight giving way to the warm amber glow of Edison bulbs and exposed brick walls. The aroma of fresh ground coffee beans and baking pastries wrapped around me like an old friend's embrace, a stark contrast to the sterile efficiency of the law office and the lonely quiet of my motel room. Jim was already there, rising from a corner table with the same genuine smile that had made him such good company at yesterday's disaster of a birthday party. His handshake was firm, his eyes carrying the kind of concern that came from decades of friendship. "Ralph, my friend, you look—" He paused, studying my face. Different, stronger, somehow. Funny how a good night's sleep and some hard decisions can change a man's perspective. We moved to the counter where a barista with paint-stained fingers and kind eyes took our orders. Black coffee for Jim, a cappuccino for me, an indulgence I rarely allowed myself when Alice was always watching my spending like a hawk monitoring prey. Settled at our table with steaming mugs between us, Jim leaned forward with the patient attention of someone who'd witnessed enough life's upheavals to know when a friend needed to talk. "So tell me what happened after we left last night." Carol was worried. She said she heard voices from inside when we were saying goodbye. The words tumbled out like coffee beans from a broken bag. I described the confrontation in the living room. Alice's cold dismissal of our guests, Logan's assertion of dominance over their house. Jim's expression darkened as I recounted the key left on the coffee table, the suitcase rolling down dark streets, the strange peace I'd found. That narrow motel bed. "They actually threw you out." Jim's voice carried disbelief. "On your birthday. After calling me a burden." "Yes. Jesus, Ralph. I knew they seemed distant lately, but that's—" He shook his head. "That's unconscionable. I continued with the morning's events, the blot credit cards, Alice's furious phone call, Logan's attempted intimidation in the parking lot. As steam curled from the cup, his words echoed my inner shift, transforming the sting of loss into a badge of reclaimed strength amid the afternoon light. And then this morning, I rewrote my will. Everything goes to charity now. Jim's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. Everything. A foundation for seniors who've been abandoned by their families. People who understand what it means to have their love weaponized against them. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the gentle clatter of dishes and the low murmur of other conversations. Jim sat down his cup with deliberate care, studying my face, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "You know what, Ralph? Good for you." His voice carried a conviction that surprised us both. "I've watched Alice and Logan treat you like a walking ATM for years. We all have, but none of us knew how to say anything without overstepping. You saw it too? Of course we saw it last night at dinner. The way she rolled her eyes when you were talking about your garden. The way Logan kept checking his phone like he had somewhere better to be at your own birthday party, for God's sake." The memory surfaced. Alice's bored expression as I described the tomatoes I'd been nurturing. Logan's dismissive snort when I'd mentioned hoping to visit my sister in Oregon next month. Details I'd noticed but dismissed, filing them away under the category of family dynamics, rather than recognizing them as symptoms of a deeper disrespect. "I keep wondering when it started," I said, "when I stopped being their father and became their financial resource. Probably gradual. People don't wake up one morning and decide to be cruel. They slide into it one small compromise at a time." Jim reached across the table, his weathered hand briefly covering mine. "But you stopped the slide. That takes guts." My phone began to ring, the sound cutting through our conversation like a fire alarm. Alice's name flashed on the screen. Her photo, a smiling image from last Christmas that now seemed like evidence from a crime scene. Jim glanced at the phone, then back at my face. "You going to answer that?" I stared at the screen, watching it pulse with each ring, knowing that whatever Alice had to say would only confirm the rightness of every decision I'd made since walking out of that house. The cafe continued its gentle rhythm around us, unaware that at table 7, a man was choosing between his past and his future with each unanswered ring. The phone's insistent ring sliced through our conversation like a blade through silk. Alice's name pulsing urgently on the screen as conversations around us momentarily quieted. Jim raised his eyebrows, waiting to see what I would do. I swiped to answer and deliberately switched to speaker mode, setting the phone on the wooden table between our coffee cups. "Dad, have you completely lost your mind?" Alice's voice exploded from the tiny speaker, drawing stares from nearby tables. "Logan told me about your little tantrum at that sleazy motel. Good afternoon to you too, Alice. Don't you dare take that tone with me. I just got emails, cancellation notices for our Hawaii trip, $28,000 down the drain because you're having some kind of senior moment." Jim's eyes widened as Alice's fury filled the small cafe. Other patrons had stopped pretending not to listen, their conversations dying as this family drama played out in real time. The trip was canceled because the person paying for it decided he didn't want to vacation with people who call him a burden. "This is insane. You can't just Logan thinks we should have you committed," declared mentally incompetent. "You're clearly not thinking straight." As her voice echoed off the walls, drawing stares from nearby tables, a wave of validation surged through me, sharper than the steam rising from forgotten mugs. The memory flashed. last year's family cruise to Alaska. Another surprise I'd funded while Alice spent the entire week complaining about the food, the weather, the excursions I'd carefully planned. Actually, Alice, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. You're destroying our family. How are we supposed to explain this to people? How are we supposed to pay for— You're supposed to pay for things the same way every other adult does, with your own money, from your own job, using your own resources. The silence from the speaker lasted exactly 3 seconds before Alice's voice returned higher and more desperate. You can't do this. We have obligations. Logan's business needs Logan's business is not my problem. Your shopping habits are not my problem. Your inability to live within your means is not my problem. Each word came out calm and measured, carrying the weight of years of suppressed frustration. I'm done being your personal bank account. Dad, please. You're scaring me. This isn't like you. You're right. The old me would have apologized by now. Would have transferred money to fix whatever crisis you've manufactured. Would have begged forgiveness for having the audacity to expect basic respect from my own daughter. Jim reached across the table, squeezing my free hand in encouragement. But that man is gone, Alice. The man who raised you, who sacrificed everything for your happiness, who believed family meant something. You killed him the night you threw him out of his own house. What you're talking to now is what's left, and what's left has decided he's done. You're my father. You can't just abandon it. Watch me. I ended the call with a gentle tap, Alice's protests cutting off mid-sentence. The cafe fell into complete silence for a heartbeat before something unexpected happened. Someone started clapping. It began with the elderly woman at the corner table, her weathered hands coming together in slow, deliberate applause. Then the businessman near the window joined in. The young mother with the stroller, the college student with his laptop. Within seconds, the entire cafe was applauding. Not mockingly, but with genuine support, as if they'd all witnessed something rare and necessary. Some customers nodded knowingly. Others smiled with the recognition that comes from their own experiences with ungrateful family members. Well done, Jim said quietly, his own hands joining the applause. Beautifully done. The clapping faded gradually, leaving behind a warm buzz of conversation and the soft clink of cups returning to saucers. I picked up my cappuccino, surprised to find my hands completely steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, growing fainter as it moved away from downtown. The sound blended with the gentle murmur of strangers who had somehow become witnesses to my liberation, their voices creating a symphony of ordinary life continuing around moments of extraordinary change. I took a sip of my cooling coffee and smiled. The echo of applause followed me as I rose from the table, shaking Jim's hand with the gratitude that comes from knowing someone truly sees you. Thank you for listening, for everything. Anytime, friend, and Ralph, I'm proud of you. The next month unfolded like pages turning in a book I'd never dared to read. Within a week, I'd contacted Sarah Mitchell, Kalispell's most respected realtor, a woman whose confidence and no-nonsense approach reminded me of the person I was becoming. I want something that's completely mine, I told her as we drove through tree-lined neighborhoods, something with space to breathe. The house she showed me on Hillside Drive was perfect. A modest ranch with wide windows overlooking the Swan Mountains, a kitchen built for one person who actually enjoyed cooking, and a front porch that caught both sunrise and sunset. The previous owners had maintained it lovingly, leaving behind the scent of fresh paint and possibility. It has good bones, Sarah said as I signed the purchase agreement, like its new owner. Moving day came with the kind of crisp Montana morning that made everything seem possible. My possessions from the motel room fit into a single carload: clothes, toiletries, Maria's photograph, and the manila envelope containing my new will. Everything else I was learning had been unnecessary weight. With each mile under the vast ski, where pines whispered secrets of renewal, the chains of obligation dissolved, leaving space for breaths I'd long forgotten. I drove to Flathead Lake, hiked the trails I'd always promised myself I'd explore, discovered that solitude felt like freedom rather than loneliness. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from Alice and Logan. Apologies that felt calculated pleas about mortgage payments and business expense. Accusations of cruelty wrapped in the language of family obligation. I read them once and deleted them immediately, feeling nothing but relief that their emergencies were no longer mine to solve. The voicemail from Logan was particularly pathetic. "Ralph, come on. We all said things we didn't mean. Alice misses you. I miss you. Can't we work this out like family?" Family. The word had lost its power to guilt me into submission. Instead, I spent my days exploring my new freedom. The grocery store where I bought exactly what I wanted to eat. The hardware store where I selected tools for projects that pleased only me. The bookstore where I purchased novels I'd always meant to read. Finally having the mental space to enjoy stories that weren't dominated by other people's crisis. 3 weeks into June, I stood on my new front porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains, a travel brochure fluttering in my hand. Scotland, Ireland, places I dreamed of visiting but never prioritized, because Alice always had more immediate needs for my resources. The brochure pages turned like new chapters, each destination representing choices I could make purely for joy rather than obligation. The evening breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and possibility rustling through the pines with a sound like quiet applause. Behind me, my house waited with lights in the windows and dinner on the stove, a life-sized, exactly to fit one man who'd finally learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. Tomorrow I might call a travel agent. Next week I might take that photography class I'd seen advertised at the community center. The future stretched ahead, unencumbered by guilt or the exhausting mathematics of keeping ungrateful people happy. For the first time in decades, my time belonged entirely to me. As darkness settled over the mountains and stars began to emerge in the vast Montana sky, I folded the travel brochure and tucked it into my shirt pocket next to my heart. The night was quiet, except for the gentle sigh of wind through the trees and the distant call of an owl claiming its territory. I had claimed mine, too. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.